The global positioning system data came in before dawn on a Thursday, and the researcher monitoring the feed had to read it twice before accepting that the numbers were real. The giant anteater they were tracking in the Cerrado savanna of Mato Grosso do Sul state had visited 163 termite mounds since the previous sunset, not randomly, in a circuit, a route that had begun repeating itself with an internal logic so precise that when the team mapped it over weeks, the pattern of return visits matched something the models had never been built to anticipate. The team called their lead researcher in at 7 in the morning. Nobody had expected this. This is the story of how Brazil began returning giant anteaters to a Cerrado degraded by a century of industrial agriculture, and what the data from those animals tracking harnesses revealed about a relationship between mammal and mound so sophisticated and so ancient that it had been functioning for millions of years before anyone thought to measure it. To understand why this matters, you need to know what was lost. The Cerrado is Brazil's second largest biome. It covers approximately 2 million square kilometers of central Brazil, or about 23% of the country's land surface. Scientists classify it as the world's most biodiverse tropical savanna. It is home to more plant species than any other savanna on Earth. Over 7,000 plant species are documented there. The region holds roughly 4,800 species of plants and vertebrates that live nowhere else on the planet. It is sometimes called the upside-down forest. The name comes from the way the Cerrado stores its biological wealth. Above ground, the vegetation looks modest, twisted fire-adapted trees, low shrubs, open grassland between them. But those trees push their roots 12 meters below the surface in some places, chasing water through ancient red soils during the long dry season. Those deep roots and the soil organisms woven around them store the equivalent of 13.7 billion metric tons of carbon dioxide. More than 5 times the carbon held above the surface. Researchers have called it one of the largest terrestrial carbon sinks in South America. And in the soil of the Cerrado, the termites build their cities. In the Cerrado, termite mounds are not rare structures dotting the landscape. They are the landscape. A single study of just 2,500 square meters of savanna in southeastern Brazil mapped 450 termite nests representing 46 distinct species. These are not simply insect housing. Researchers who have analysed the chemical composition of mound soil consistently find significantly higher concentrations of organic carbon, nitrogen, phosphorus, calcium and magnesium compared to the surrounding land. The soil inside a termite mound holds water differently. It is aerated differently. In some tropical biotopes, termites account for between 54 and 68% of all biological decomposition. They are breaking down dead plant material around the clock and returning it to the living system. The Cerrado runs on them, and in the savannas around Imas National Park in Goiás State, those termite mounds glow at night. After the first rains of the wet season, the larvae of a click beetle called Pyrrhia termitiluminans emerge to the mound surface. Each larva produces a green bioluminescent light bright enough to read by. Hundreds of larvae on a single mound. Thousands of mounds spread across the darkened savanna. Researchers and photographers who have witnessed it describe it as looking like a city seen from altitude. The larvae use the light as a lure. Flying termites are drawn to it and killed. It is one of the most extraordinary nocturnal sights in South America, and it depends entirely on the termites maintaining healthy, stable, active colonies. Stable termite colonies in the Cerrado depend on something the region had been steadily losing since the 1950s. The transformation of the Cerrado into agricultural land began in earnest when the Brazilian government opened the interior to development in the post-war decades. The flat terrain, deep soils, and low land prices made it ideal for mechanized farming. By the early 21st century, the Cerrado had lost approximately 48% of its native vegetation. Only 19.8% remains undisturbed today. The rest has been converted to cattle pasture, soybean fields, sugarcane, and roads. Deforestation in the Cerrado increased by 13% between 2019 and 2020 alone, amounting to 7,340 square kilometers in a single year. In the Matapiba agricultural frontier of the northern Cerrado, soybean cultivation expanded by 253% between 2001 and 2014. The giant anteater vanished from enormous portions of its range. In the states of Rio de Janeiro, Espírito Santo, Santa Catarina, and in multiple other regions, the species was effectively gone before anyone assembled a plan to bring it back. The global Cerrado population had declined by an estimated 30% in 10 years. The animals that remained faced not just habitat loss, but a new and specific threat. The roads built to service the soybean and cattle industries were killing them at rates the science was slow to measure. Between January 2017 and December 2019, a monitoring team documented 725 giant anteater deaths from vehicle collisions in Mato Grosso do Sul state alone. A separate analysis placed the average rate at approximately 40 deaths per 100 kilometers of paved road per year. Roads were the crisis. Giant anteaters move slowly. Their eyes are small relative to their body size and do not reflect headlights. Their hearing is poor. Their dark fur disappears at night. They are precisely the wrong animal to share a highway with freight trucks moving at 80 kilometers per hour. Without the anteaters, the termite mound landscape they had managed for millions of years was on its own. And nobody, at first, connected the loss to the mounds. Dr. Arnaud Desbiez founded the Wild Animal Conservation Institute in Mato Grosso do Sul state. His team refers to it by its Portuguese acronym ICAS. His initial project, launched in 2017, was designed to do something specific and grim. Count the roadkill, understand who was dying, where and why. Build enough data to move road authorities and government agencies toward action. The counting was brutal. But as his team began fitting surviving animals with GPS tracking harnesses that recorded a location every 20 minutes, a parallel story emerged from the data. Animals in intact Cerrado habitat were exhibiting a pattern of mound visitation that nobody had anticipated. Not because the pattern was chaotic, because it was the opposite. Precision. Meanwhile, in Minas Gerais state, a program called Tamanduarsas had been underway since 2017. Run by the State Institute for Forests, known by its Portuguese acronym IEF, with technical support from ICAS and the conservation organisation Nobilis Tamanduarsas, had a focused mission. The orphaned giant anteater pups arriving at rescue centres across Minas Gerais, most of them young animals whose mothers had been killed on highways, needed to be raised, rehabilitated and returned to the wild. Not as curiosities, as functioning members of a Cerrado ecosystem that had been running at a significant deficit ever since their species started disappearing. The programme's name is a play on the Portuguese words for anteater and wings. The idea behind it was straightforward. Give the animals that survived the accident the chance to fly. A Tamandu ASAS pup arrives at the rehabilitation centre typically between 1 and 2 months old. It cannot feed itself. Its first weeks are spent in intensive care, bottle fed on a specialised formula, assessed by veterinarians for injuries, weight and developmental condition. The team walks a narrow line between contact and distance. Too much human interaction in the early months produces an animal that cannot function independently. Too little produces one that cannot be safely monitored after release. At around 4 to 6 months, the pup begins foraging. Termite mound material is collected from the field and brought to the rehabilitation enclosure. What happens in these early sessions surprised the research team from the beginning. The pups, none of whom have ever observed a parent foraging, demonstrate the patch switching behaviour immediately. They open a portion of mound, they extract from it for a short period, then they move on before the colony's defensive response, the biting and chemical secretions of the soldiers, becomes intolerable. No one taught them this. It is embedded. By approximately 12 months of age, when the animal has reached sufficient weight and demonstrated stable foraging competence, the team selects a release site. These sites are in state conservation units in Minas Gerais, protected areas where road density is low and termite mound density is sufficient to support an adult animal's foraging range. The release uses our soft protocol. A temporary enclosure is built in the release area. The animal orients to the new landscape from within it. Feeders outside provide supplemental food during the transition. The move from enclosure to open savanna happens over weeks. Every released animal is fitted with a leather harness carrying a GPS unit and a VHF radio transmitter. The leather is biodegradable. The GPS records a location every 20 minutes. Field teams use the VHF signal to locate animals in dense vegetation. Researchers conduct regular condition checks recording body weight, habitat use, and mound interaction data whenever direct observation is possible. By 2024, the program had reintroduced 24 anteaters into protected Cerrado landscape in Minas Gerais. Each experience, in the words of the ICAS team, contributed important lessons for the conservation of the species. What the tracking data showed in the months after each release was not what any of the protocols had prepared them for. Here is the key insight that changed everything. Giant anteaters are known to visit large numbers of termite mounds and ant nests in a single day. The scientific literature had placed the estimate at up to 200 such visits over 24 hours. The animal spends roughly 1 minute at each nest before moving on. That is not enough time to collapse a colony. The colony responds to a partial extraction by accelerating its repair behaviour. It rebuilds at a faster rate than it would have without disturbance. Researchers had understood this in isolation. What the GPS tracking of reintroduced animals revealed was the systemic consequence of that behaviour across an entire home range. Each released animal, within weeks of its soft release into protected Cerrado, established a stable territory. A study tracking 23 giant anteaters in the Brazilian Cerrado using continuous GPS data found individuals occupied stable home ranges with a mean area of 5.45 square kilometres. Within those ranges, the animals moved in repeating circuits. The routes were not identical every day, but the underlying structure was consistent enough that researchers mapping multiple months of location data could identify the main corridors of each animal's circuit before the animal completed them. Scientists expected foraging animals moving through a resource landscape. What they found was a landscape being actively managed. Let me put that in context. A single giant anteater consumes approximately 35,000 ants and termites per day. It extracts from each mound for roughly 1 minute before moving on. That extraction never depletes the colony. The colony rebuilds. When the anteater returns, it finds a mound that has repaired itself and is ready to support another brief extraction. The colonies across the anteater's range are kept in a state of perpetual calibrated productivity. Never collapsed, never allowed to grow so large that they begin competing aggressively with surrounding vegetation for soil resources. That second point matters more than it might seem. Without predator pressure, certain termite species do not simply hold steady. Their foraging corridors expand. In regions where the Cerrado has been converted and anteater populations eliminated, entomologists have documented termite infestations of agricultural fields that undermine root systems and force chemical treatment. Termites are essential to the Cerrado ecosystem when their populations are managed. They become a problem when nothing is managing them. For millions of years, the giant anteater was the manager. The animals do not deplete the resource. They calibrate it. Here is a detail that rarely makes it into the conservation conversation. Giant anteaters also dig for water. When surface water is unavailable, a giant anteater uses its forelimbs, equipped with claws the length of a human finger, to excavate the soil. These excavations create small depressions in the terrain. Those depressions collect rainwater. In a fragmented Cerrado landscape where permanent water sources are increasingly rare, The small waterholes created by anteater digging behaviour become critical refuges for birds, reptiles, small mammals and amphibians that cannot travel the distances required to reach unmodified water. A single anteater moving its circuit across 5 square kilometres creates multiple such features per year. Arnaud Desbiez of ICAS described the picture emerging from the tracking data as something the team had not anticipated. In his assessment of the early monitoring results, the animals were functioning as what he called precision engineers within the living infrastructure of the Cerrado. The models were not built for this. Now consider the economics. The cost of raising and releasing a single giant anteater through the Tamandu ASAS soft release protocol runs to a few $1,000s per animal. That animal then provides for the full 10 to 14 years of its natural lifespan in the wild, termite population management across several square kilometres of landscape. It provides soil aeration management through its mound maintenance behaviour. It provides distributed waterhole creation at no further investment. It does this continuously and at no operating cost, navigating by a sense of smell 40 times more acute than a human's. The alternative in converted Cerrado regions is chemical termite management on agricultural fields. The per hectare cost of termiticide application in soy-producing areas of Mato Grosso do Sul state runs to several $100s per treatment cycle, requiring reapplication every 2 to 3 years. The anteater does not require reapplication. It improves the soil in the process. The system was rebuilding itself, not the way engineers rebuild things, the way nature rebuilds things. Slowly, then suddenly, here is what this story does not resolve. In August of 2024, the ICAS team announced they were relocating their 7-year study in the Cerrado from the Santa Lourdes Ranch region of Mato Grosso do Sul. In the preceding 3 years, they had watched the entire area convert from a mosaic of cattle pasture and native scrubland to continuous soy monoculture. In the new landscape, pesticide application was incompatible with anteater survival. Animals were no longer reaching dispersal age before being killed. The team could not study dispersal, in their own words, because the anteaters were simply not living long enough to disperse. Leaving a 7-year study site where you would watch wildlife and ecosystem functions slowly erode is, as Arnaud Desbiez wrote in a public update at the time, hard. The ranchers and farmers driving that conversion are not villains. They are operating within a global commodity system in which the services provided by a giant anteater's foraging circuit appear on no balance sheet. The economic pressure originates in demand from Brazil's domestic market, from China, from the European Union. A producer in Mato Grosso do Sul, making a land use decision, is responding to a pricing structure built by a global supply chain that does not price termite management or soil aeration or distributed waterhole creation as inputs worth paying for. There is also a dimension that ecological science has been slower to address. A study published in 2023 surveyed 259 rural residents in the Pantanal and Cerrado regions of Mato Grosso do Sul about their attitudes toward giant anteaters. Nearly 40% of respondents considered the animal a symbol of bad luck. People believed that something negative would follow a sighting. Failed hunts, illness, general misfortune. The researchers found that while none of the respondents admitted to killing an anteater, the negative beliefs translated into behaviours ranging from avoidance to physical intimidation of individual animals. Building a landscape where giant anteaters can function requires changing not just government policy, but culture. Policy moves slowly. Culture moves slower. There is a termite mound in Imas National Park that stands approximately 3 meters tall. It has been there in various states of active construction and repair for a very long time. After the first rains of the wet season, hundreds of Pyrrhorhinus larvae emerge to its surface and glow green in the darkness. The light is strong enough to read by. The larvae catch flying termites by luring them toward the glow. The termites die. The larvae feed. The mound persists. Somewhere at the edge of the park, where the protected savanna meets the soybean fields, a giant anteater is moving through the dark on a circuit it has been running for months. Its claws, maintained in precision condition by the constant work of opening mound after mound, hover a few centimetres above the soil as it walks on its knuckles. Its nose is low to the ground. It is reading the landscape in a radius of scent no instrument has been built to replicate. It arrives at a mound it last opened weeks ago. The colony has rebuilt. It opens the outer layer in 4 seconds. Its tongue enters the mound at 150 strokes per minute. 50 seconds later, it moves on. The mound begins rebuilding immediately. That is not coincidence. That is a system that evolved over millions of years and is still trying, in the fragments of landscape we have left it, to do what it was built to do. What part of this surprised you most? Was it the foraging circuit? Was it the water holes? Was it the economics of what one animal does for free across 5 square kilometers of land it has known for 10 million years? Tell me in the comments. If you are not subscribed yet, now is the time. We cover stories about restoration and the people who are fixing what is broken. Hit subscribe. See you in the next one.